I didn't hear her say it the first time. I heard the laugh. The small, tight laugh Brittany does when she wants everyone in the room to know she said something clever and is waiting to be appreciated for it. I was standing in the mudroom between the garage and the kitchen, 2 cloth bags hanging from my wrists, the cold weight of a rotisserie chicken pressing against my hip. I'd walked 12 blocks in October wind to bring them dinner because Madison had been homesick all week, and Daniel had sent me a text on Tuesday that said, "Mom, any chance you could grab some groceries? We're slammed." I'd said yes. I always said yes. Then I heard her laugh again, and then I heard the words that followed it. "She can eat out of the garage fridge. This one's for our family." I stood very still in the mudroom. Through the half-open door, I could see a slice of the kitchen, the quartz countertop I'd chosen. In 2011, when Daniel said he couldn't afford the upgrade, the pendant lights I'd paid Roy from church to install the summer after Harold died, because I couldn't stand another evening under that yellow ceiling bulb, the French door stainless refrigerator I'd bought the summer. Madison was born because their old one kept leaking onto the baby's bottles. Now that fridge had a rule, and I wasn't on the right side of it. I almost stepped in. I almost said, "Brittany, I'm right here." I almost laughed it off, the way I'd laughed off 100 other things over 11 years of marriage to my son. "She's tired. The baby kept her up. She didn't mean it like that." But then I heard another small sound, a sniff, a shoe scuffing against tile. Madison, my granddaughter, was in the kitchen, 14 years old, standing right there while her mother made a rule about her grandmother. And nobody said anything. Not Madison. Not Daniel, who I could now hear 2 rooms away with the television turned up too loud, the way he always turned it up when he didn't want to hear what his wife was doing to his mother. I didn't step in. I didn't say a word. I turned around, walked back through the breezeway into the garage, and I opened the second fridge, the one we used to keep Thanksgiving overflow and summer sodas in. It hummed against the far wall, next to a stack of cardboard boxes and a broken snow shovel. Inside, half a case of beer, a wilting bag of baby carrots, and a jar of pickles with something floating in it. I placed my groceries inside. The yogurt, the blueberries, the chicken still warm through its plastic, the half-gallon of milk. The bag of oatmeal cookies I'd baked that morning for Madison because they'd been her favorite since she was 4. Then I closed the garage fridge, crossed the breezeway, and walked out the front door. My son never noticed I'd been there at all. I walked home slowly. My house was only 4 blocks away. The October leaves were wet on the sidewalk. And I kept my eyes down, not because I was crying, but because I was counting. Counting every time I'd handed her something. Every time I'd folded my hands in my lap and called it love. By the time I reached my porch, I had the number, not in dollars, in years. 23. The next morning, I made coffee in the small pot. Just 1 cup. I sat at my own kitchen table. The oak one Harold had refinished 3 summers before he got sick, and I didn't eat. I wasn't hungry. I was clear. I opened the cabinet over the sink and took down the cookie tin Madison used to reach for on her tiptoes. Empty, of course. I'd sent the last batch to the garage. Then I sat at the table and let myself remember. Not everything, just the things I'd been training myself not to remember for over a decade. I remembered the rehearsal dinner in 2014. Brittany's mother had called me Evelyn, the mother of the groom, for the entire evening, and Brittany had never corrected it to Daniel's mum. I'd told myself it was nerves. She was young. I remembered the first Thanksgiving in their new house, the one I'd helped them buy. Brittany had seated me at the corner of the table next to the wall, where I had to stand up every time anyone needed to pass behind me. When I'd made a small joke about it, she'd said, "Evelyn, you're the only one flexible enough to sit there." She had smiled. Everyone had laughed. I had laughed. I remembered Madison's 5th birthday. I'd spent 2 months hand-stitching a quilt with little fabric hearts I'd cut from Daniel's baby clothes. When I gave it to Madison, Brittany had said, Oh, Evelyn, how homey. We'll keep it in her closet. The quilt never came out of that closet. I checked every visit for 7 years until I stopped checking because I'd started to feel pathetic about it. I remembered the Christmas Eve when Brittany told me not to bring food because the kids don't really eat old-fashioned stuff. I brought my sweet potato casserole anyway. Madison ate 2 servings. Brittany served it cold the next day to the dog. I remembered 100 small moments where she'd called herself our family and meant not yours, our traditions, our calendar, our rules, our fridge. And I remembered Daniel, always Daniel, sitting across the room with the newspaper up or the television on, not quite looking at any of it, not quite looking at me either. His silence had been the real theft. Brittany could only do what she did because he let her. Every time. I sat at that oak table for a long time, with the coffee going cold. Then I opened the drawer beside the telephone and pulled out a folder I hadn't looked at in nearly a decade. The folder was labelled in Harold's handwriting. Loan Daniel and Brittany. August 2014. $62,000. My help with the down payment on the house they now lived in. The house where my groceries were apparently a threat to their family. I spread the papers out across the table one by one. Harold had insisted on doing it properly. If you give a grown man money without a document, he'd said, you're teaching him you don't exist. He'd drawn up the terms himself at this very table. 4% interest. No required payments until the eldest child reached school age. Full balance due on demand thereafter. I read his handwriting. The small, tidy capital letters he used for headings. The way he underlined amounts twice. I remembered the afternoon we'd signed it. Brittany had come over with Daniel. She'd read through the document at this table, her mouth getting tighter and tighter. And finally she'd said, "This feels a little formal, don't you think? We're family." Harold had smiled at her. The same small, warm smile he used on door-to-door salesmen. "Brittany, dear," he'd said, "family is exactly why we write things down." She'd signed. Daniel had signed. Harold had filed the document in this folder, and we had never, in 11 years, asked for a payment. Not one. I'd told Daniel it could wait until Madison was in school, then middle school. Then I'd stopped bringing it up, because Brittany always tightened her mouth when money came up, and I didn't want to be the mother-in-law who tightened mouths. $62,000 at 4%, compounded over 11 years. I did the math on a napkin. The balance now sat at just over $83,000. I sat with the number for a long time. It didn't feel like money. It felt like a receipt proof that I hadn't imagined the last decade. Proof that I wasn't being difficult or dramatic or hostile. 3 words Brittany had used about me at different points to different relatives. The number was just arithmetic. Cold and fair. I picked up the phone and called a woman named Delia Fontaine. She wasn't a friend exactly, she'd handled Harold's estate, and we still exchanged Christmas cards. She answered on the second ring. "Evelyn, it's been a while." "I'd like to come see you this week," I said. "I have some documents." She didn't ask what kind. Tuesday at 10. Tuesday came grey and steady. I wore my navy skirt and the blouse with the small pearl buttons, the one Harold had bought me for our 40th anniversary. You dress for what you're about to do, and I was about to do something I should have done years ago. Delia's office smelled like paper and oolong tea. She had reading glasses on a chain and a way of letting silence do half her talking. I placed the loan folder on her desk, then the deed to my house, then the envelope holding my will. "Walk me through what you want," she said. "I want to call in the loan," I said. "The full amount, with the interest rate we wrote down in 2014. She did the math on a yellow pad, then looked up. 83,140. Yes, they won't be able to pay that. I know. You understand what that means? I do. She looked at me over her glasses for a long moment. "Evelyn, you're sure?" "Delia, On Sunday, my daughter-in-law put my groceries in the garage, in front of my granddaughter. My son heard it and turned up the television. I have been sure for about 72 hours, but I have been preparing for 23 years. She nodded once, slowly, and began pulling forms from her drawer. Then I slid my own deed across the desk. And this one? I'm selling it, I said. She paused. The house? The house. Evelyn, that home has been in your name since before Daniel was born. I know, that's why it's mine to move. She didn't argue. She picked up her pen. We spent 3 hours working through it. The loan demand letter to Daniel and Brittany, certified mail, 30 days to pay or respond. The revision of my will, Daniel removed as executor, a professional fiduciary named in his place. The removal of Daniel as beneficiary on my checking account, my retirement account, and the small annuity Harold had left in my name. Madison I kept, but in trust, not in Brittany's hands. Delia drafted it, so the money couldn't be touched until Madison was 25 and couldn't be influenced by either parent. One more thing, I said. The proceeds from the house sale. Where do you want them? I'll buy something small for myself. A 1-bedroom. Something I can close the door on. The rest goes to the Methodist Church's meal program for housebound widows. I used to drive for them before my knees went. She wrote it down without comment. When I stood to leave, she walked me to the door, and for just a moment her professional mask softened. You're going to be all right, Evelyn. I already am, I told her. I just hadn't filed the paperwork. I walked home through the cemetery, not because I was being dramatic, but because it was the shortest route, and Harold was buried there. I stopped at his headstone for a minute. I didn't cry. I don't think he would have wanted me to. I'm selling the house, I said out loud. I hope that's all right. The wind moved through the oak above his plot. I decided that counted as an answer. When I got home, I called a locksmith. He came the next morning. A young man named Julian, with a kind face and a union patch on his jacket. And he changed every lock on the house, front, back, side, garage. I had him do the mail slot too, though he laughed and said, nobody does mail slots anymore. I do, I said. You want a deadbolt on the back too, ma'am? The old one's basically decorative. Yes, the strongest one you have. He whistled under his breath when he saw the side door. Who'd you make mad? My family, I said. He looked at me. Then he nodded, like he understood, and he upgraded me to the deadbolt that required 2 different keys without charging me for the second cylinder. When he was done, I made 4 copies of the new keys. 1 for my purse, 1 for the fireproof box, 1 for my neighbor Corinne, who had fed my cat every time I'd gone anywhere since 1997, and 1 for Delia because she'd asked me to leave a copy with someone who wasn't family, and I realized I didn't have anyone else to give one to. That night I sat on the back porch in Harold's old sweater and watched the dark come in. Somewhere 2 streets over, a dog was barking, and the distant clatter of someone's garage door was closing. Garage, I thought, and I almost smiled. The realtor came on Thursday. Her name was Patrice, and she'd sold 3 houses on my block in the last 5 years. She walked through my rooms with a clipboard and a measuring app on her phone, making small, approving noises. Original hardwood, she asked in the dining room. Under the carpet. Harold pulled it up in '88 and refinished it himself. This is going to move fast, Mrs. Hollister. How fast? In this market. Days. Maybe less. Can you do a quiet listing? Not the front yard sign. Not yet. She understood, without me explaining. I signed the paperwork at my own kitchen table, with a cup of peppermint tea going cold beside my elbow. When she left, I sat in the living room and looked around. 43 years of marriage had happened in this room. Daniel had taken his first steps across this rug. Harold had read the newspaper in that chair every Sunday for 3 decades. The walls still held the tiny pinholes from where I'd hung a different Christmas wreath every year. I didn't feel sad. I felt ready. There's a difference, and grief teaches it to you eventually if you let it. The loan demand letter went out certified mail on Friday. On Sunday evening, my phone rang. Daniel. I let it go to voicemail. Mum, what is this? Brittany just opened the mail. What is happening? Call me back right now, please. I deleted it. He called again at 9:15. Mom, I don't understand. This letter says $83,000. 83. You never once. We never. Mom, is this some kind of mistake? Did the lawyer, is this Delia's handwriting? Because this is not please. Please call me. Delete. At 10:40, he called again. Brittany in the background this time. I could hear her voice pitched high and tight, and his voice lower, trying to calm her. Mom, Brittany is really upset. She's crying. She thinks you're trying to punish her for something, and I told her, that's not that. That's not who you are. So can you just call me and tell me what's going on, and we can figure this out like a family, please? Like a family, I played that one twice. On Monday, the calls started again. Daniel at 7:50 in the morning. Daniel at 9. Daniel at 11:30. His voice flatter now. The voice of a man starting to understand that his mother was not going to rescue him from his own choices. Then, at 1 in the afternoon, Brittany's number came up for the first time. Evelyn, it's Brittany. I don't know what I did to make you this angry, but I think we should talk. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Daniel is beside himself. I am beside myself. Madison is asking questions and we don't know what to tell her. Please call me. I listened to it twice. I noticed the order. Daniel first, Brittany second, Madison third. I noticed that at no point did the word sorry appear. I deleted it. Tuesday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. Daniel on the porch, his hair uncombed, no jacket, just the flannel he wore around the house. Behind him in the driveway, Brittany in the passenger seat of the SUV with her arms crossed and her face turned away. I didn't open the door. Mom, I know you're in there. Your car's in the driveway. Mom, please. I stood on my side of the door with my hand flat against the wood. Mom, whatever this is, whatever Brittany said or did, we can talk about it. Just open the door. Whatever Brittany said or did. Like he didn't know. Like he hadn't been 3 rooms away with the volume turned up. He stayed on the porch for nearly 10 minutes. He knocked twice more. He tried the doorknob, found it locked, and made a small sound. I hadn't heard from him since he was 15. The sound of a person who has just realized something about himself. Then he went back to the SUV. I heard the argument start before the door even closed. Brittany's voice, rising. Daniel's voice, quieter. Then they drove away. That night I wrote in a small notebook, something I hadn't done since I was a girl. I wrote, "A closed door is not cruelty. It is honesty with a handle." The house sold in 11 days. A young couple, expecting their second baby. Patrice said they'd cried when they walked through the kitchen because the wife had grown up in a house with the same yellow tiles. I told Patrice to accept their offer, even though a higher one came in the next morning from an investor. I didn't want my house flipped. I wanted it lived in. While the sale was pending, I went apartment hunting. I found a place on the west side of town, in a small complex for people over 55. 1 bedroom, ground floor, a window that faced a maple tree and a little patio just big enough for 2 chairs. The manager was a woman named Yolanda, who wore reading glasses on top of her head and called me Miss Evelyn within 10 minutes of meeting me. "You can move in the 1st of next month," she said. "I'll take it. Don't you want to think about it?" Yolanda, I am 71 years old. I have done enough thinking for 3 lifetimes. She laughed, a real one, the kind that creases the eyes. I liked her immediately. Madison called on a Wednesday. My granddaughter is 14. She'd found my number in her father's phone, she said, and she'd been too scared to call until now. Her voice sounded younger than 14 on the phone. It sounded like she was folded up small somewhere. "Grandma, is it true you're selling the house?" "It is, sweetheart." She's really upset. She's been crying. Dad's been sleeping on the couch." I waited. I've learnt that waiting pulls truth out of people, the way silence pulls water out of a well. "Grandma, she said something about you, at the house, that day." "I know, I heard." "You heard?" "I was in the mudroom, sweetheart. I heard all of it." She started crying. Quiet, careful crying. The kind a teenage girl does when she doesn't want her mother to hear through the wall. I didn't know what to do. I just stood there. She told me to go upstairs, and I went. "Madison, listen to me. You are 14. It was not your job to fix that moment. It was not your job to stand up to your mother in her own kitchen. Please hear me, you did nothing wrong. But you're leaving." "I'm not leaving you. I'm leaving a situation. That's different." "Can I still see you?" "You can always see me, but we'll do it on my terms now. You can call me any time. You can come to my new place when you're old enough to drive, or when someone can bring you. But I'm not coming back to that house, Madison. Not for holidays. Not for birthdays. That season is over." She cried a little longer. Then she said, very softly, "Okay." "And Madison, the money I was saving for you, it's still there. It's in a trust. No one can touch it but you, when you're old enough." "Grandma, I don't want—" "I know you don't. That's why you get it." Brittany showed up alone on a Saturday. She rang the bell twice, waited, then rang it a third time. I looked through the peephole. She had on her good coat, the camel one, and she was carrying a casserole dish wrapped in foil, like that was going to fix anything. I opened the door this time, not wide, just enough. "Evelyn," she said. Her voice had that careful pitch people use when they're trying to sound reasonable and haven't been for some time. "Can we talk?" "We can talk right here." She glanced at the porch chairs. I didn't invite her to sit. "This has gotten out of hand," she began. "The letter, the loan thing, I didn't mean what I said that day. I was stressed. Madison had been sick all week. I hadn't slept. And I lashed out. I know how it sounded. It sounded exactly like what you meant." She flinched. "Evelyn, please." "Brittany, you put my food in the garage, in front of my granddaughter. You called yourself our family in a way that meant I wasn't." My son heard it and turned up the television. "I am not angry. I want you to understand that. I am not even hurt anymore. I am simply done. We can't pay $80,000. "I know. So what are we supposed to do?" "Brittany, that is the first time in 11 years you have asked me a question about that loan. I notice that it isn't, 'How do we make this right?' It's, 'What are we supposed to do?' Even now, the verb is still about you." Her face went red, the blotchy red of a woman who is not used to being described accurately. "You're being cruel." I almost smiled. "I am being clear. They are not the same thing, though I understand why they feel that way to you." She held out the casserole dish. "I brought you—" "Take it home." "Evelyn, take it home, Brittany, or put it in the garage." She stared at me. For one long moment, her whole face rearranged itself, the careful mask slipping just enough to show me what was underneath, which was not sorrow and not shame, but pure, sharp fury. Fury that I was not playing the part I had always played. Fury that the script she had written about me for 11 years had stopped performing. Then she turned and walked back to her car. She left the casserole on my porch railing. I watched her drive away, and then I picked up the dish and carried it next door to Corinne, who was delighted. "What is it?" she asked. "I have no idea," I said, "but it's not mine to eat." I moved on the 1st of November. The moving men were efficient. I'd labelled every box. "Kitchen keep, closet donate, Harold careful." They didn't ask. They didn't need to. I walked through the empty house one last time. The rooms echoed differently without the furniture. The hallway where I'd measured Daniel's height every birthday was just a hallway now, painted over 3 times, but I could still feel the ridges if I ran my fingers along the doorframe. I left one envelope on the kitchen counter for the new owners. Inside was a note that said, "The oven runs 10 degrees hot. The basement gets damp in March. The lilac by the side gate was planted in 1984. Please don't cut it back too hard. Welcome home." Then I locked the door for the last time and slid the key through the realtor's lockbox. I didn't cry in the driveway. I cried a little in the car, for maybe 90 seconds, and then I put on the radio and drove to my new apartment. Yolanda met me at the door of 1B with a little potted violet. "Welcome home, Miss Evelyn." 2 weeks into the new apartment, Daniel found me. I don't know how. Maybe Madison told him, or maybe he drove the complexes on the west side one by one. Either way, on a Tuesday evening in mid-November, the intercom in my kitchen buzzed, and Yolanda's voice came through. "Miss Evelyn, there's a gentleman here, says he's your son." I held the intercom button down for a moment. I thought about saying no. I thought about the easy sentence. Tell him I'm not available, and how many times in my life I'd wanted to say that and hadn't. "Tell him I'll come out to the lobby," I said. "I'm not opening my apartment." I put on my cardigan. I walked down the short hallway. Through the lobby windows, I could see him standing on the other side, hands in his pockets, looking at the floor like a boy outside a principal's office. I didn't go outside. I opened the inner door just enough to stand in the frame. "Daniel." He looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. He hadn't shaved. "Mum, you weren't going to tell me where you moved?" "No, I wasn't." He absorbed that. "I just want to talk." "Then talk. I'm listening." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Brittany doesn't know I'm here." I assumed. I don't know what to say, Mum. I know what happened. I know I heard her. I know I turned up the TV. I've been sitting with that, for I can't sleep." "That sounds uncomfortable." He winced. "That's fair." "Daniel, what do you want from me right now?" "I don't know. I want to know if there's any path back. Anything." I looked at him for a long time. My son, 43 years old. The boy who'd climbed into my bed during thunderstorms. The man who'd stood in a kitchen 2 rooms from his mother and turned the volume up. "Daniel, there might be. But it isn't one you can walk in a week, and it isn't one I'm going to walk with you. You have to do it alone. You have to figure out who you married and why you stopped defending the people you love from her. And you have to do that without me in the room telling you it's okay. Because it isn't okay, and I am not going to make it okay for you anymore. Mom, I'm not finished. If you do that work, really do it, not the performance of it, then maybe in a year, or 2, or 5, we'll have a cup of coffee. Maybe. But I'm not going to wait for you, Daniel. I am going to live my life in the meantime. Do you understand?" He was crying now. Quiet, adult crying. The kind that looks like a man trying to breathe evenly. "Yes. Go home, Daniel. Can I write you? You can write me. I may not answer." "That's okay. That's fair." He turned to leave. At the door, he stopped. "Mom," the thing she said, in the kitchen, "I want you to know I heard it. I want you to know I heard it." "I know you did," I said. "That's the whole problem, sweetheart." Then I closed the inner door, and I walked back to my apartment, and I sat in the armchair, and I did not cry. His letter came about 3 weeks after that. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. "Mom, I've been trying to write this for a while. I keep starting over. I don't want it to sound like an excuse, because it isn't one. I heard Brittany that day. I heard her before too, lots of times, and I pretended I didn't. I turned up the TV, so I wouldn't have to decide what kind of man I was going to be. And then I let myself forget I'd made that choice. I've been making that choice for a long time. I don't know how to be someone different yet, but I'm trying. I'm in counseling. I haven't told Brittany. I don't know what that means for anything. I just wanted you to know. Your son, Daniel. I read it twice. Then I put it in a drawer. Not the trash, not a frame, a drawer. Some apologies need to sit in a drawer for a long time before they're anything else. That's not cruelty. That's honesty with a handle. The Methodist Church cashed the check in early December. The pastor called to thank me and asked if I'd like to come to the Christmas luncheon. I said I would. I wore the navy skirt, the pearl button blouse. The church hall was full of widows and a few widowers, and one volunteer named Dorothy, who remembered me from when I used to drive meals in 2006. She hugged me like I'd never stopped coming. Evelyn Hollister, she said. Where have you been? Oh, Dorothy, I said. I've been finding my way back. On Christmas Eve, Madison came to my apartment for the first time. Her mother dropped her off at the curb and didn't come in. That was fine. That was, in fact, the correct arrangement. Madison brought me a small, wrapped box. Inside was a picture frame she'd painted herself, pale blue with little gold stars around the edge. She'd already put a photo in it, one I'd never seen before, taken by someone at a family cookout years ago. It was me, holding her when she was maybe 4, and we were both laughing at something just off camera. I found it in Dad's closet, she said. He had a whole box of pictures of you. I didn't say anything for a long moment. Then I put the frame on the small shelf above my armchair. Right there, I said. That's a good spot. We made cocoa. We watched an old movie. She asked if she could come again sometime, and I said yes, always. As long as she came as herself and not as anybody's messenger. She understood. 14-year-olds understand more than we give them credit for. They just don't have words for it yet. Before she left, she did something I didn't expect. She went to my kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and stood, looking at it for a long moment. Grandma? Yes, sweetheart? Is there anything in here I'm not allowed to eat? I looked at her. She was trying to ask it lightly. She wasn't quite managing. Madison, I said, everything in this kitchen is yours. Every shelf, every drawer, every crumb. Do you understand me? She nodded. Her eyes were shining. Okay, Grandma. That night, after she'd gone home, I sat on my little patio with a blanket across my knees. The air was cold. The cardinals had gone to sleep. Somewhere in the complex, someone was playing Christmas music, the old kind with real instruments. I thought about the garage fridge. I thought about the woman I'd been 3 months ago, standing in that mudroom with a chicken in a bag, believing that silence was the price of being invited back. I thought about the letter in the drawer, the check the church had cashed, the key in Corinne's kitchen, the trust in Madison's name. The condo that was mine, wholly mine, with a door I could close from the inside. I thought about my granddaughter standing in front of my open refrigerator, needing to ask, needing to hear the answer out loud. I thought, she said I could eat out of the garage. And I had answered her, not with my voice, with my life. I went inside. I rinsed my teacup. I wrote one line in the small notebook before I turned out the light. They gave me the garage. So I gave them the whole empty house. Then I closed the notebook, and I slept the way a woman sleeps when she has finally stopped, waiting to be offered a seat at a table she already owned.